10. Worst Smokers in Hollywood History. That will shock you. Welcome to Legends of Black Excellence. But today, we're stepping into the smoke-filled shadows of Hollywood history. Imagine smoking 7 packs a day, on set, in interviews, even in hospital beds. These weren't extras, they were the stars. The same icons who graced red carpets were quietly being consumed by nicotine. Some died young, others kept puffing through chemo, and all left behind a legacy wrapped in tobacco. Which of your favorite stars made the list? Stick around as we expose the dark truth behind the glamour. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This one's going to light up the comments section. Bette Davis. One of Hollywood's most revered leading ladies, is just as remembered for her commanding screen presence as she is for her extreme addiction to cigarettes. Known off-screen as Ruth Elizabeth Davis, she became an enduring symbol of classic cinema and a cautionary tale of chain smoking. Bette was reported to consume up to 4 packs of unfiltered Vanguard cigarettes every single day, and her dependence was so intense that she once admitted she couldn't go more than 10 minutes without lighting up. Her habit wasn't confined to her personal life, it invaded her film roles. Davis insisted on portraying authenticity, which meant her characters who smoked had to do so continuously and realistically. She didn't just hold cigarettes for dramatic flair, she smoked them actively throughout her scenes, creating a visual and emotional rhythm that became her trademark. While Davis only smoked in roughly a quarter of her films, the power of her performances and her deep, gravelly voice cemented her image as a lifelong smoker in the public's memory. It's worth noting that she was never a paid spokesperson for any tobacco brand, yet cigarettes seemed permanently attached to her persona. Despite decades of heavy smoking, Bette lived to be 81 years old, ultimately passing away from breast cancer in 1989. Until her final days, she reportedly continued to smoke an astonishing 100 cigarettes daily. Even her dentist, frustrated by her refusal to stop, remarked that she smoked while waiting for appointments and even during procedures. Her legacy as a Hollywood icon remains untarnished, but her story serves as a sobering reminder of how glamorizing smoking on screen blurred the line between performance and peril, leaving a trail of smoke behind one of cinema's most iconic figures. Humphrey Bogart. The embodiment of old-school Hollywood masculinity, was as famous for his tough guy persona as he was for the ever-present cigarette between his fingers. Born Humphrey DeForest Bogart in 1899, he rose to stardom with unforgettable performances in Casablanca, The Maltese Falcon, and To Have and Have Not. His gravelly voice, world-weary charm, and relaxed demeanor made smoking look suave, but it cost him dearly. Bogart smoked approximately 2 packs of unfiltered cigarettes a day throughout most of his adult life. Early in his career, directors often handed him cigarettes to fill dead air in long dialogue scenes, not realizing they were nurturing a deadly habit. What began as a performance trick became a lifelong dependency that eventually turned lethal. The cultural impact of Bogart's on-screen smoking was immense. He didn't just act with a cigarette, he performed with it. Lighting, dragging, and flicking ash became part of his character building. In fact, bogeys even became slang for cigarettes in post-war America. But as his career soared, his health declined. Behind the scenes, Bogart suffered from a persistent smoker's cough and chronic fatigue. He often brushed off symptoms until they became impossible to ignore. By 1956, doctors diagnosed him with esophageal cancer, which had metastasized to his lymph nodes. Despite surgery and treatment, it was too late. Bogart passed away in 1957 at just 57 years old, leaving behind a legacy of unforgettable roles and a cautionary tale. He had glamorized smoking so effectively that millions imitated him, unaware of the risks. His death was a sobering irony. The man who made smoking iconic on screen was ultimately undone by the very image he perfected. Humphrey Bogart remains a Hollywood legend, but one whose voice was silenced by the smoke that defined him. Errol Flynn. The swashbuckling heartthrob of the 1930s and 40s lived a life as wild as the pirates he portrayed. Born Errol Leslie Thompson Flynn in 1909, The Tasmanian actor captivated audiences in the adventures of Robin Hood and Captain Blood. But his off-screen reputation soon eclipsed his cinematic fame, marked by indulgence, infamy, and relentless abuse of his body, including a voracious smoking habit. Flynn was known to smoke at least 3 packs of cigarettes daily, often mixing nicotine with alcohol and opiates. Friends recalled that he devised ways to inject vodka into oranges to sneak alcohol onto dry film sets. His mansion, nicknamed Sirocco by the Sea, was a den of excess with wild parties that often spiraled into chaos. Flynn's lifestyle quickly took a toll. His youthful good looks faded rapidly in his 40s. The skin that once glowed on screen became weathered and his once athletic frame deteriorated. He was also involved in serious legal controversies, including a highly publicized 1942 statutory rape trial from which he was acquitted, but not without damage to his reputation. By the early 1950s, Flynn had transitioned into playing worn-down characters, a grim reflection of his real-life decline. His final years were spent on his beloved yacht Zeka, which he was eventually forced to sell due to mounting financial issues. In 1959, Flynn died suddenly in Vancouver at just 50 years old while trying to offload his boat. The coroner's report shocked the public. His liver was so damaged it resembled that of a 75-year-old, and he had severe coronary artery disease. The official cause of death was a massive heart attack. Errol Flynn's downfall was as dramatic as any role he ever played. Another golden-era icon burned out by a toxic mix of fame addiction and tobacco-fueled bravado. Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't just a performer, he was a phenomenon. As the only black member of the legendary Rat Pack, Davis brought extraordinary talent, versatility, and charisma to stages and screens alike. Born in 1925, his legacy includes singing, dancing, acting, and a relentless drive to break racial barriers. But along with fame came a crippling habit, chain smoking, that would ultimately steal his greatest instrument, his voice. Unlike other Rat Pack members who often faked drinking on stage with apple juice, Sammy's cigarette use was real and constant. He would frequently light up during live shows, sometimes inhaling mid-performance and releasing a stream of smoke as he delivered his next note. While audiences saw it as part of his effortless cool, the consequences were far from glamorous. Despite warnings from fellow artist Nat King Cole, who suffered from smoking-related illness himself, Davis dismissed concerns. Over time, the intense heat and tar from cigarettes began to wear down his vocal cords. In the 1980s, a specialist confirmed that years of singing while smoking had caused inflamed nodules, significantly affecting his range and stamina. Even as his voice weakened, Davis continued performing. However, the toll became increasingly evident. In 1989, he was diagnosed with throat cancer. Although doctors advised surgery, he declined a full laryngectomy, fearing it would rob him of speech entirely. He ultimately lost the battle in 1990 at the age of 64. Sammy Davis Jr.'s story is heartbreaking, not because he lacked discipline or passion, but because the very thing he loved performing was slowly destroyed by a habit he never beat. A man once known for his show-stopping numbers was silenced not by age or fading fame, but by cigarettes that burned away both his voice and his life. Rod Serling redefined American television with The Twilight Zone, blending eerie science fiction with profound social commentary. Born in 1924, Serling was more than a screenwriter. He was a visionary. Yet behind his creative brilliance was a man plagued by anxiety, perfectionism, and deep self-doubt, which he medicated with a crippling cigarette addiction. Serling was known to smoke 4 packs of unfiltered cigarettes a day, beginning early in his Army service during World War II and continuing throughout his meteoric rise in the 1950s and 60s. While The Twilight Zone brought him accolades and a permanent place in pop culture history, it also became an unbearable creative burden. The pressure to replicate that success in later projects drove him deeper into dependency. After The Twilight Zone ended in 1964, Serling struggled to regain the same cultural impact. He took on smaller projects, appeared in commercials, and even did voiceover work, but none matched his earlier triumph. All the while, his smoking habit intensified. The trademark rasp in his voice grew harsher, his energy waned, and his health steadily deteriorated. By 1975, Serling's heart was failing. Doctors recommended triple bypass surgery to address his severely clogged arteries. Despite undergoing the procedure, Serling suffered multiple heart attacks on the operating table. He died at just 50 years old, leaving behind a legacy of imagination, innovation, and personal torment. Unlike the fictional horrors he scripted, Serling's demise was all too real. His creativity may have shaped modern storytelling, but he couldn't escape the smoke-filled prison he built for himself. In the end, it wasn't the weight of the cosmos or alternate dimensions that claimed Rod Serling. It was the relentless grip of cigarettes that silenced one of TV's most brilliant minds. Jackie Gleason was larger than life in every sense, physically, professionally, and tragically. Born in 1916, Gleason became a beloved figure in American television, best known for his role as Ralph Cramden in The Honeymooners. His booming laugh, razor-sharp timing, and signature, and Away We Go, made him a household name. But behind the laughter, he harbored a series of destructive indulgences, none more potent than his addiction to cigarettes. Gleason was a 5-pack-a-day smoker for most of his adult life. He paired his smoking with excessive alcohol consumption and a voracious appetite, often eating multiple meals at once. At his heaviest, his weight fluctuated between 230 and 330 pounds, which only compounded the risks already posed by nicotine and alcohol. Despite his fame, Gleason's health became a spectacle. He struggled with mobility, suffered from chronic pain, and often relied on assistants to complete basic tasks. His smoking habit was so relentless that he would light one cigarette from the embers of the previous. These behaviors not only impacted his body, but also affected his personal relationships and sexual health. Gleason once quipped that sex for a fat man is much ado about puffing. Diagnosed with colon cancer in the mid-1980s, Gleason continued smoking even as he underwent treatment. He passed away in 1987 at the age of 71, leaving behind an entertainment legacy and a cautionary example of unchecked indulgence. Though adored for his comedy, Jackie Gleason's real tragedy lay in the slow deterioration caused by the habits he never gave up. His story is a sobering reminder that fame doesn't insulate anyone from the consequences of addiction, especially when cigarettes are part of your daily script. Yul Brynner. Name evokes images of power and control. His bald head, deep voice, and commanding presence defined iconic roles like the King in The King and I and Ramses in The Ten Commandments. Born in 1920, Brynner was a towering figure on stage and screen. But despite his regal demeanor, he fought a private war against a deadly addiction, smoking 5 packs of cigarettes every day. Unlike many of his peers, Brynner didn't glamorize cigarettes on screen. He kept his smoking mostly off camera, but in real life his dependency was constant. Decades of inhaling unfiltered cigarettes took their toll, and in 1983 he was diagnosed with inoperable lung cancer. The diagnosis was grim and he knew it. What set Brynner apart wasn't just the intensity of his habit, but what he did in the face of death. In his final months, he recorded a chilling anti-smoking public service announcement aired posthumously in 1985. Speaking directly to the camera, his voice raspy and haunted, he declared, "Now that I'm gone, don't smoke. Whatever you do, just don't smoke." It remains one of the most memorable PSAs in history, a rare case of a celebrity using their own demise as a warning. Brynner passed away at age 65, but his legacy continues through that message. He transformed from a figure of strength and stoicism into a messenger of consequence, using his final breath to reach others. His death marked not just the end of a Hollywood legend, but the emergence of a cautionary figure, one who didn't just fall to cigarettes, but tried to pull others back from the brink. Clark Gable wasn't just a movie star. He was the movie star. Dubbed the King of Hollywood, he captivated audiences in classics like Gone with the Wind and It Happened One Night. Born in 1901, Gable epitomized rugged masculinity with his signature mustache, commanding voice, and casual elegance. But beneath the confident swagger was a longtime smoker who paid a steep price for a habit he couldn't quit. Gable began smoking as a teenager and by adulthood was consuming 3 packs of unfiltered cigarettes daily, along with cigars and pipe tobacco. Despite his physical vigor, he joined the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II and flew multiple combat missions. His body silently deteriorated under the strain of chronic smoking. His lifestyle was disciplined on set but self-destructive off it. Gable often smoked between scenes during interviews and even during breaks from filming. Colleagues noted his constant cough and diminishing stamina, but the Hollywood machine kept rolling. Over time, his heart weakened from years of tobacco-related stress. In 1960, after filming The Misfits with Marilyn Monroe, Gable suffered a massive heart attack. Doctors believed the emotional stress and physical demands of the shoot combined with his long history of smoking pushed his health over the edge. He died days later at the age of 59. Gable's death stunned the public as the image of invincibility they'd seen on screen vanished overnight. Though he remained America's leading man to the end, the truth is unavoidable. Smoking slowly eroded the health of Hollywood royalty. Clark Gable may have conquered the box office, but he couldn't conquer nicotine. His legacy stands not only in his films, but in the silent warning that even kings can fall. Spencer Tracy was revered as one of the most naturally gifted actors in cinematic history. Born in 1900, his quiet intensity and restrained performances earned him 2 Academy Awards and 9 additional nominations, an unmatched feat during his era. But behind the gravitas was a man deeply entangled in a network of self-destruction. His vices were many, but chain smoking remained one of the most relentless. By the time he reached his 40s, Tracy was reportedly smoking between 60 and 80 cigarettes per day. This heavy smoking was accompanied by chronic alcohol use and reliance on prescription medications for insomnia and anxiety. Tracy's health began to collapse under the weight of these overlapping addictions. In 1963, he suffered a severe attack of breathlessness, signaling the deterioration of his respiratory system. 2 years later, he was diagnosed with hypertensive heart disease, a condition aggravated by decades of nicotine use. Despite his ailing condition, Tracy pushed forward with work, most notably on his final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. By then, he was so weak that producers scheduled his scenes around his declining stamina. Tracy spent much of his final years secluded, dependent on longtime companion Katharine Hepburn, who cared for him through multiple health crises. He died in 1967 at age 67, just 17 days after wrapping his last scene. Spencer Tracy never publicized his smoking habit. He didn't need to. It left visible marks in his voice, his skin, and ultimately his heart. His brilliance on screen masked a life quietly slipping away off camera, a tragic narrative of how even the most controlled performances can't hide the chaos cigarettes cause behind the curtain. John Wayne, born Marion Robert Morrison in 1907, was the undisputed titan of American westerns. With a booming voice, towering frame, and moral certainty, Wayne defined the archetypal American hero across more than 170 films. But beneath the bravado was a lifelong addiction that quietly stalked him: 7 packs of unfiltered Camel cigarettes per day. That's not hyperbole. It's a matter of record. Wayne's smoking began in high school and intensified as he became a studio favorite. Whether filming action sequences or giving press interviews, a cigarette was never far from his reach. His on-screen image often included smoking as a prop, mirroring his real-life dependency. By the 1950s, he was even endorsing Camel cigarettes in advertisements, lending his rugged image to a product that was slowly killing him. In 1964, Wayne underwent major surgery to remove a cancerous tumor and most of his left lung. At the time, he publicly attributed his illness to cigarettes and even made statements warning others against smoking. For a brief period, it appeared he had turned a corner, But old habits resurfaced and he continued using cigars and chewing tobacco, unable to completely sever ties with nicotine. By 1979, doctors discovered stomach cancer likely linked to his continued tobacco use. After multiple surgeries and treatments, Wayne passed away on June 11, 1979, at 72 years old. His final days were marked by physical decline, but also by tributes from a nation that saw him as a cultural giant. John Wayne's story is a stark contradiction, the embodiment of toughness felled not by gunfire or combat, but by cigarettes. His death remains one of the most high-profile examples of Hollywood's long, dangerous relationship with smoking, a habit too powerful even for the Duke to outdraw. Before you light another cigarette thinking it looks cool, remember how it ended for Hollywood's brightest stars. From Betty Davis to John Wayne, addiction didn't care about fame, it silenced legends. So now we ask, can glamour ever justify the grave? Should Hollywood still be forgiven for promoting smoke as sophistication? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if this video made you reflect, hit like, subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence, and join us as we uncover the powerful, painful, and provocative stories behind the faces we thought we knew.